Hi, Kate French here, clinical psychologist. Just coming to you live this Friday afternoon because it's been a little while since I've done that, and wanted to just share a couple of thoughts or insights that have been popping around in my head in the area of autism and schools, seeing that it is the beginning of the year, and I've talked a little bit about transitioning back to regular school days, especially after 2020, where regular school days were a bit few and far between for lots of Victorians and certainly for other people around the world. So thinking about autism and schools, and just thinking about the importance that I know that it has for families when there is a really good relationship between schools and families, and between classroom teachers and the whole system that kind of revolves around children when they're at this institution that we call schools, and having their education needs kind of met. So I suppose I was just thinking, in my mind, schools have come an awfully long way in terms of understanding. It's a bit like the community understanding of autism has really increased over the last 5 to 10 years. Awareness has really increased. And I suppose the flip side of that, though, is whilst the awareness has increased, sometimes what happens is the what to do is slower to kind of catch up. So there's an awareness that there's more kids being diagnosed, there's more likelihood that you'll have a student in your classroom, for example, that is identified as autistic or as possibly autistic, but it's then the what do we do aspect of it. And different teachers will have had different experiences, either in their own personal world, in terms of, do they know somebody who's autistic? Do they have family members that are autistic? And that will influence, I suppose, their comfort level in terms of, finding ways to support children in the classroom, altering their expectations about, sitting still and needing sensory breaks and all those kinds of things. So, yeah, the importance of school is massive, very, very massive. Most kids do attend school. Obviously, there's a portion of kids who decide, or families who decide, that homeschooling or remote online learning is a kind of a better fit for their child and for their family. But for the most part, most kids, autistic kids, will be in some sort of formal classroom kind of learning where you have, 15 to 20 other children that the teacher is trying to help learn, help them learn, to teach the materials, help them grow. And just thinking about the responsibility and the challenges that comes with that. And then being able to do, what those families, those individual families really want for their children as well, which is to give them their, most amazing, best experience at school, in knowing that there might be challenges with, following some of the classroom learning, or whether it's more out in the playground where they're having trouble maybe socializing or developing friendships. So, teachers' responsibility, and teachers, the expectation I think we have for teachers is really, really big, and it's not an easy task to do when there are so many demands. And I know that teachers have an awful lot of on their plate. There's an awful lot in the curriculum. There's an awful lot of pressure, I think, to be very well rounded in mental health, in understanding disabilities, in understanding specific learning disorders, in understanding medical needs as well, when you have kids with anaphylaxis and allergies and all that kind of thing, not to mention all the other things that are there that I haven't mentioned today. So there's a big expectation and there's a big responsibility for schools to be well informed, well educated, but it's incredibly important for the family, and it's incredibly important for the individual, the autistic child or student, to have a teacher that is knowledgeable, or if they're not knowledgeable, be able to say that, and then look to their principals, their deputies, to the structures around them in the education system to help improve that, and to give them the support if they are not feeling well equipped to teach these kids who may be struggling for lots of different variety of reasons. So just thinking, I think I have done a post a little while ago which talked about the Amaze education strategy that is was unveiled at the end of last year, and it's rolling out over the next 4 to 5 years, I think, with a major shake-up of what the Victorian education system in particular will look like in years to come in terms of improvements responding to the needs of autistic families when they've said, this is what we want, this is what we need for our kids in this education system. We need really knowledgeable teachers. We need knowledgeable support people in the classrooms. We need to be thinking about their sensory needs and how we can support that. We need support in the playground as well for helping them develop those relationships with their peers. So it's not just developing an individual education plan or an individual learning plan and looking at the academics part of it. It's thinking more broadly than that, because we know schools are much more broadly than just teaching curriculum and reading and writing and maths and science and music and art. There's all that social learning that goes just being with other peers, but also having that unstructured time and how do they develop friendships and how do they develop conflict resolution skills in the playground? How do they resolve that? How do they learn negotiation and play and all the things that go with that? And sometimes kids on the autism spectrum and autistic kids, they need extra support with that. They need the unwritten social rules being made clear to them and helping them navigate that. And we also need a lot more understanding for the non-autistic kids and neurotypical kids to understand autistic kids and about how they function, how they work, so that they can be more flexible and inclusive of them, so that there's not labeling of autistic kids' behaviour as naughty or antisocial or problematic. And that can so quickly happen if there isn't a diagnosis and that diagnosis is not shared with the other students. They see behaviour that doesn't fit what they're doing, and so unfortunately it often gets labelled in a really negative kind of way, not because they're nasty children, it's because the understanding is just not there. So that part of it too, in terms of having more resources for teachers to be able to feel comfortable sharing with a classroom about difference, about accepting all kinds of difference, and about asking questions about kids' behaviour in a nice way, or encouraging them to have that think about why a certain student might not be able to do that, or not speaking, or not playing in the way that you might typically expect, and having an understanding of some of those differences and challenges, but also thinking about the strengths of those autistic kids as well, and that sometimes the education classroom and even the social environment, the way that most schools are set up, is not a platform that always brings out their strengths. So finding environments for them that does celebrate their strengths, that they can have room to feel calm, feel safe, feel contained, and let their interests and let their strengths really shine. So I would love to see more of that happening in our education systems and in our schools, and have that kind of being shared with teachers as well, as a goal for kids to really embrace neurodiversity and things like that. And I know there's definitely movements towards that. I would just love it to be more common, I suppose, than the exception to the rule. But hopefully with, like I said, some big structural government kind of changes with funding support as well to help with education and some of the changes that need to happen, we will get a shift kind of moving in that direction. But in the meantime, I suppose it's just a chance to think for yourself in terms of, if you're a parent with a child who is autistic, how much knowledge does the teacher have? How much conversation is the teacher allowed to have about that diagnosis with the other children? Is that something that you're comfortable with? Is it something that you've discussed with your own child about sharing that? And I know sometimes that comes down to very much individual decisions and things, but I suppose for me, it's about encouraging. The more we talk about something, the less taboo it is, the less stigmas attached to things. It's like with our discussions about mental health. Anxiety certainly seems to be anxiety, depression. So it certainly seems to be almost like a normal thing to talk about, which is great. And mental health well-being and mindfulness and meditation. I hear so much about that now, and I don't think 5-10 years ago I was hearing anywhere near enough or as much coming out of schools and things like that as I am now, which is amazing. So again, I want that same change, and I'm optimistic that that will happen, that differences and neurodiversity and talking about my ADHD brain, or that I've got an autistic brain and this is how I work. I'd love to hear children having more pride in those kinds of differences, and for kids to kind of go, oh, what's that, or what does that mean? They'll go, I know what that means. You know, we read a book about that in class the other day, or so and so in my classroom is autistic and he did a presentation about that, or whatever it might be. So I would love that to become more the norm, and and I suppose just what steps can we take today that could push that in that direction? Is there some education that you could pass along to your classroom teacher if they're saying I don't really know, or is there a resource that you could point them in the direction of? So the big ones that I often encourage people to have a look at if they're not sure, if they're teachers that are new to autism or families even, there's the Positive Partnerships website, which is a really great website that has lots of modules, lots of pro formas and things like that, and then is designed to help create a really good relationship between the education systems and families, because we know it's so important that they work really well together. So Positive Partnerships is a really good one. Amaze is the peak body in Victoria for autism, and that has lots of good resources and things as well. So there are some starting points certainly, but it's more, I suppose, about finding things that you found useful, or even sharing things about your child specifically, and this is how they work really well, or this kind of environment would really suit them. And the more we have those conversations, the more informed we all become, the more understanding I think we'll all become as well. So that's just my little thoughts for this Friday afternoon. Now, if you are somebody that is new to autism because you have a child in your family that is going through a diagnosis, or you are thinking that that might be the case, I do have one of my programs starting on the 8th of March called Glimmer, and it is designed for families who have a child or a teen that is going through the autism assessment, or that is newly diagnosed. So just letting you know about that. I'll put the link at the bottom of this video if you're interested. But otherwise, have a really awesome Friday afternoon and a really lovely weekend. We're going to have some beautiful weather here in Sunraysia. And take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.